It is almost Friday the 9th of February 2018 in the United States. It is Friday the 9th of February 2018 where I live, near Australia's national capital, Canberra. But I'm not actually in the ACT, I'm nearby. In 28 days' time it will be Friday the 9th of March 2018. And that's the date of the prophecy of Jacob and Nathan. So a few dates have gone now. The 7th of February was a couple of days ago. And there's been a lot of stuff happen on the dates that I've previously flagged. And there's been earthquakes, there's been storms, there's been a typhoon, there's been some volcanoes go off, there's been all kinds of stuff. I filmed an awesome rainbow. And there's been some stuff to do with Donald Trump, which is why this prophecy is intended to be a message against authoritarianism and a message against religious hypocrisy. And a point I made in my last video is that I live in Australia. In Australia, it really is a case that come federal election time, it doesn't matter who you vote for, because you're either voting Labor or Liberal in Australia. Liberal means Conservative in Australia, it's kind of back to front. Liberal means you're voting for the Conservatives, you're voting for the Coalition Liberal National Party, who are the Conservatives, or you're voting Labor, who are meant to be the Progressives. The one issue they've successfully done something on is same-sex marriage. That was thanks to the people, not the government. And I can tell you something else about Australia. Australia is not the nice, freedom-loving country it used to be. Freedom-loving, I think, what does it mean to love freedom? I think it means to respect the free will of other people. Australia has done nothing for the last 20 years but lock people up if they have tried to seek refuge in a country, safety, refuge, a place to live where they're not going to be persecuted or tortured or murdered. And of course you've got illegal immigrants as well. Everyone knows that. But Australia has locked up a lot of genuine refugees, genuine asylum seekers have been locked up on Manus Island and on Nauru for not just a few months, not just a few weeks or a few months, time to process them and send them somewhere, but for years. Years and years and years. And this hasn't just happened under Peter Dutton, the current Minister for Immigration, but it happened under the previous Minister for Immigration, Scott Morrison. It happened for years under the Howard government, under Philip Ruddock. And it's disgraceful. The way Australians have treated refugees, Australia's government, backed by the Australian people, because most of the Australian people have supported being cruel to refugees, let's face it. It's pretty disgusting when you think about it, and it's pretty strange that people that call themselves Christians and claim to have better moral values and better moral judgment, better moral standards than others, seem to be the people that are the cruelest towards refugees. And they say, oh, what are you talking about? We saved heaps of lives by stopping the boats. People were drowning in their thousands. And it's like, yes, they were. And you know what? I'd rather drown at sea than be locked up in a detention centre for 5 years. Seriously, I'd much rather drown at sea. Cruelty, there's no excuse for cruelty. And what really tells the truth about Australia's government, about both sides of Australia's government, Labor, Liberal, Labor, Coalition, none of them are progressive. None of them are concerned about freedom of the human spirit. None of them are concerned about safeguarding democracy. I'll tell you why. Back in August, July-August last year, several thousand people were murdered in an Asian country, which is in Australia's backyard. In this new global age, Asia is Australia's backyard. Myanmar used to be called Burma. It's next door to Bangladesh. It's quite a large country. It's Buddhist majority. The military there decided to just wipe out. And there's no other term for it. They decided to wipe out the Rohingya Muslim minority. Australia's government has not reacted to that. It has not condemned what they did. It has not changed its working arrangements with the military in Myanmar and we're now more than 6 months on, it's really disturbing to me, actually. What they did there, they killed several thousand people, slaughtered them. Every bit as bad as what the Nazis were doing to the Jews in Germany is what happened to these people in Myanmar. And because they're Muslim, Australia's government has not condemned the slaughter, has not condemned the ethnic cleansing, the attempted genocide of an entire population has just been casually ignored by the Australian government because they just take it for granted that Australians don't care about Muslims. And that is disgusting. That is so much the opposite of what the word Christian was meant to mean. That, or one would assume, if one believes in goodness as something worth pursuing, and goodness to mean respect for freedom and respect for free will, then, which actually doesn't seem to have a lot to do with religion, but in theory, let's go with the theory that religion's meant to be good, being a Christian is meant to be good. Well, it doesn't seem to be that way. I recently saw a pastor, an evangelical Christian pastor, describe, who is a big fan of Donald Trump, and he described Donald Trump's enemies as snakes. So me, Jake, and Nathan have all said, well then, I guess we're snakes. Serpent boys, Jacob and Nathan. Yeah, why not? If that's what the enemies of Donald Trump are, let's slither. Because we do not want to be hypocrites. Australia, like I just said, the government here has not condemned what happened in Myanmar, and the opposition, I've heard not a peep out of the opposition here either about what happened to the Rohingya Muslims. It's terrible. I mean, they threw little boys, tore them out of their mother's arms, and threw them into fires to burn to death. Nathan Breeze, who is one of the boys behind this prophecy, he burned to death on Saturday, Black Saturday, the 7th of February 2009. He was with his mum, his older sister, his little sister. So Nathan understands that when you take a little kid out of their, tear them out of their mother's arms and throw them into a fire to burn alive, it's actually worse than what happened to them, to Nathan and his family. You know why? Because they were killed in a mega bushfire, what they call a mega fire, a firestorm. The only good thing about that is the heat is so great and the power of it is so great that it kills you pretty fast. When you throw a little kid into a fire, that is just pure torture, and there's no other word. It's a crime against humanity of the worst kind. Sure, there were refugees who, after 4 years of imprisonment on Nauru, set themselves on fire and burned to death. That did happen. Peter Dutton's response was to come out and blame the lefties for it, saying that they encouraged acts of self-harm by the refugees. I saw Peter Dutton crying, teary-eyed because the father of a one-punch, coward punch victim called up the radio station, 2GB, and thanked Peter Dutton for deporting the guy who killed, or the accomplice of the guy who killed his son, who was given an 18-month good behaviour bond, which is obviously not an appropriate sentence. And if you've killed someone, I think, and you're involved, this guy was obviously quite involved in a killing, then I think you should at least go to jail. Absolutely. I've got no problem with criminals being deported. What I do have a problem with is treating people differently because of their race. And I see that happening in Australia today, or because of their religion, or because of a combination of where they're from, their religion, their race. Donald Trump's pushing this racist agenda in America, and I can honestly say there's a big difference between if you're talking hypocrisy, most of the hypocrisy that I can see is on the Republican side in America. They have become such extreme hypocrites that for one of the ardent Christian evangelical supporters of Donald Trump to describe Donald Trump's enemies as snakes is probably the apex of hypocrisy, and it's good grounds for becoming a snake. So, it's almost Friday, the 9th of February 2018 in the United States. In 28 days it will be Friday, 9th of March. And the anniversary of the Ash Wednesday bushfires, Friday, 16th of February 2018, is 9 days after the anniversary of the firestorm in which Nathan Breeze died. And that was on the 7th of February 2009. There's something in this, I'm not sure what it is, but you know, there's a message. There's definitely a message against religious hypocrisy and authoritarianism. Absolutely. And if you want to see hypocrisy to the max, just look at the Republican Party in America today. It is unbelievable.
Breaking news now, we are just minutes away from the second government shutdown this year, and it's only February. Here to discuss CNN Global Affairs analyst David Rode, CNN political commentators Alice Stewart and Bakari Sellers. Weren't we just here like 2 weeks ago?
It's like Groundhog Day.
Doing this?
Again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Been a long year.
Why is this happening again?
I would say the divisions in the Republican Party. I mean, it's there's going to be problems in the House because of the Democrats, but this is the president and Mitch McConnell being unable to control, his senators.
Yeah.
And Rand Paul.
It seems like maybe this is what we call bipartisanship, because it seems like Democrats, Alice, and Republicans are upset with Rand Paul.
Yeah.
Do they have the right? Does he have the right to do this?
Well, look, I'm all about bipartisanship, but at the same time, you have to get everybody on the table and agree to what the proposal is before you shove it down their throats. And look, people can be mad at Rand Paul all they want, but I do think he had a right to say, look, let's at least have some amendments on there. Let's hear a few more voices here. And he, in my view, he was right. He didn't have the opportunity to have input on this, and now he does.
Yeah. So, do you think Democrats are going to hold this up once he gets to the House?
I don't have a lot of faith in my Democratic colleagues and friends having the fortitude to withstand the kind of onslaught that comes with these courageous budgets.
You did say testicular fortitude.
I did not. Yeah. Fortitude that you have to have that strength to withstand the onslaught that's coming towards you. We saw that in the last shutdown. But what I will say there are economic factors that people really just aren't paying attention to. From the volatility in the market that we've seen in the last week, dropped another 1,100 points today, to the fact that gas prices are slowly ticking back up. And something I didn't pay that much attention to, but my wife brought it to my attention, the price of milk is slowly going back up and commodities are going back up. And so interest rates are ticking up slowly. So we're starting to see the economy that Donald Trump inherited slowly slip away from him. And I'm not sure people are paying attention to that, on top of the fact that you have a dysfunctional government or Congress. That doesn't bode well for a president who really doesn't know up from down.
Well, and also you see and I'll let you get in, but you see the stock market sort of, some people say it's correcting itself, but then there are other analysts who said they're worried about a bull market at this point.
Well,
That's the concern, is that as interest rates go up, that the economy could overheat. And this is, again, sort of a partisan argument, that this huge tax cut, this infusion of money by the Republicans was not needed. And it might overheat this economy, and that's the interest rates.
Well,
that's
I mean,
the rise of the gas.
One of the things I have to point out when you talk about that huge tax cut, something we'll talk about, the reason we're kind of at this budget crisis is the fact that the level of hypocrisy of the Republican Party has become almost insurmountable, because now they don't care about our national deficit. And what you're starting to see is $1.4 trillion being added on to the deficit because of this tax bill that passed, when all of a sudden they cared about it under Barack Obama, but now they don't care about it under Donald Trump.
I do think we need to be careful not to dogpile on the Republicans with regard to the shutdown.
No, I'm equal opportunity.
But look, I think the Democrats also need to realize they should have learned during the last shutdown that we need to let an appropriations measure be about appropriations, not about policy. And here they go, once again, trying to interject immigration policy in a budget deal, and it didn't work last time. It shouldn't be the case this time. Look, the Democrats are pushing back on this because they want to include DACA provisions. And there is an opening and there is an opportunity for us to provide protections for Dreamers. This isn't the time. This needs to be about the budget and only about the budget. At the same time, Republicans want to make sure we don't hurt the deficit and have too much spending. But Democrats need to let this be about the budget, and let's worry about DACA.
Hold on.
In the next few weeks.
Producers, can I get the thing from Frank Bruni, the scroll, and then but when is the right time?
Well, let's look at the calendar. Right now, we should have been working on a budget. We should have done that over the last week, so we wouldn't be at this measure. DACA, we have until March to work on that measure. So let's take the next few weeks and have a conversation about DACA. And let's say this. Republicans did say that they would have this conversation, so they need to be true to their word.
Bakari, I want to put this up because this is since the last government shutdown, and this was on January 22nd, right? And look, I'll just let it scroll. This is everything. Well, I'm sure we left out some things we just forgot, but look at all of this. The president said that he'd like to testify before Mueller. Lawyers said not so fast. The president went to Davos. Melania went to Florida. We learned the president tried to fire a special counsel last June, and then he accused Democrats of being treasonous. Bannon and Lewandowski refused to testify. The stock market went up, and then it plunged, and then it went back up, and then it plunged again today. I mean, all of these things. So why should anybody, Democrat or Republican, or anyone who is invested in the market, why should they have confidence in this White House when you look at all of this chaos?
Man, I'm just amazed by this because that doesn't even encompass the $130,000 to Stormy Daniels or Fire and Fury, which was just a few weeks before all of this happened, before the last one. So week after week after week, we're getting to these new points.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have to say is Republicans, it was nearly 6 months ago when the president ended this, brought an end to the DACA program. And so we need to make sure that we have a resolution for these individuals, and we need to do something about the deficit because it's out of control.
Are you saying about you guys are going to come back? We have more in our breaking news as we approach midnight Eastern. The federal government shutting down again. We're going to be live for you. Go live to the Capitol for the very latest. Don't go anywhere.